Eccentric billionaire Clive Palmer has relaunched his plans to build the Titanic 2, rather the third time in just over a decade.
For over a decade, one of the most ambitious maritime projects has lingered in a state of perpetual almost. Australian billionaire Clive Palmer promised the world a full-scale replica of the RMS Titanic, complete with the same luxurious interiors, the same class divisions, and yes, even the same grand staircase. The project stalled, restarted, and stalled again. But in late 2025, Palmer made headlines once more, insisting that Titanic 2 might finally set sail in 2026. So what's actually happening with this massive undertaking? Let's dig into where the project stands today. The man behind the vision.
And we hope to commence construction of the ship in 2025, and the first ship will come into service, scheduled at the moment in June 2027.
Clive Palmer isn't your average dreamer. The Australian mining magnate built his fortune through coal, iron ore, and nickel operations, amassing billions in the process. His business ventures have ranged from the strategic to the downright eccentric, and Titanic 2 definitely falls into the latter category. When Palmer first announced the project in April 2012 aboard the USS Intrepid in New York City, he wasn't just floating an idea. He came with blueprints, timelines, and bold promises. Palmer's company, Blue Star Line, was specifically created to bring this vision to life. The announcement generated massive media attention worldwide. Here was a billionaire willing to pour hundreds of millions into recreating a ship that famously sank on its maiden voyage in 1912, killing over 1,500 people. Some called it tribute, others called it tasteless, but nobody could deny it was audacious. What drives someone to recreate a disaster? Palmer has consistently framed the project as a celebration of human achievement and craftsmanship. The original Titanic represented the pinnacle of Edwardian-era engineering and luxury. It was the largest moving object ever built at the time, a floating palace that symbolized industrial progress and ambition. Palmer wanted to capture that spirit while incorporating modern safety features that would prevent history from repeating itself. His initial timeline was aggressive. He promised the ship would be ready by 2016. The plan involved Chinese shipyard CSC Jinling, which would handle the massive construction project. Palmer seemed unfazed by skeptics who questioned whether anyone would actually want to sail on a ship sharing a name with history's most famous maritime disaster. He pressed forward with characteristic confidence, commissioning detailed design work and even hosting a gala dinner to attract investors and generate buzz. But Palmer's track record isn't without complications. His business empire has faced numerous legal challenges over the years, with disputes involving unpaid debts, workers' wages, and business partners. This pattern of grand announcements followed by messy legal entanglements would eventually catch up with the Titanic 2 project itself. Yet Palmer remained the project's most vocal champion, appearing in countless interviews to defend and promote his vision of bringing the legendary ship back to the seas. The original design plans. The ambition behind Titanic 2 wasn't just to build a large cruise ship and slap the Titanic name on it. Palmer committed to creating an authentic replica, mirroring the original's dimensions and layout as closely as possible while meeting modern maritime regulations. The original RMS Titanic measured 882.5 feet long and 92.5 feet wide, with a gross tonnage of 46,328 tons. Titanic 2 would match these specifications almost exactly. The design work fell to naval architects and historians who studied the original Titanic's blueprints extensively. Every detail mattered, from the coal-burning appearance, though the ship would actually run on diesel engines, to the recreation of the famous grand staircase, Turkish baths, and first-class smoking rooms. The goal was to make passengers feel like they'd stepped back in time to 1912, minus the iceberg and inadequate lifeboats. One of the most controversial decisions involved maintaining the original's class system. Titanic 2 would feature first-class, second-class, and third-class accommodations, just like its predecessor. First-class passengers would enjoy spacious suites, fine dining in the a la carte restaurant, and access to exclusive areas like the Café Parisien. Third-class passengers would get more modest cabins and communal dining spaces. This decision sparked debate about whether such overt class divisions belonged in modern society, but Palmer argued it was essential to the authentic experience. The interior design required sourcing period-appropriate materials and working with craftsmen skilled in early 20th century techniques. The original Titanic featured intricate wood paneling, ornate plasterwork, and custom furniture that represented the finest craftsmanship of its era. Recreating these elements in a world dominated by modern manufacturing processes presented significant challenges. Blue Star Line partnered with design firms specializing in historical restoration to ensure accuracy. The ship's capacity would accommodate approximately 2,400 passengers and 900 crew members, similar to the original. However, the crew would need training not just in modern maritime operations but also in maintaining the historical atmosphere. Imagine serving passengers while dressed in period-appropriate uniforms and following Edwardian-era service protocols. The level of detail Palmer envisioned extended to every aspect of the passenger experience. CSC Jinling Shipyard in China was selected for construction based on their experience with large vessels and competitive pricing. The contract called for the shipyard to build the vessel according to exact specifications provided by Blue Star Line. This partnership seemed solid initially, with construction timelines and milestone payments all laid out, but the complexity of building a replica rather than a standard modern cruise ship would prove more challenging than anyone anticipated. The decade of delays. The first few years after the 2012 announcement saw genuine progress. Steel cutting ceremonies marked the official start of construction in 2013, with Chinese workers beginning the massive undertaking of assembling Titanic II's hull. Photos emerged showing an early framework taking shape at the shipyard. Palmer made several visits to inspect progress, each time assuring media that everything remained on schedule for the 2016 launch. But cracks began showing in 2014. Reports surfaced of disagreements between Blue Star Line and CSC Jinling regarding payments and design modifications. The shipyard claimed that Palmer's company hadn't met its financial obligations, while Palmer countered that the shipyard wasn't following specifications correctly. These disputes quickly escalated from private negotiations to public mudslinging, with both sides releasing statements attacking the other's credibility. By 2015, construction had slowed considerably. The shipyard diverted resources to other projects, citing unpaid invoices from Blue Star Line. Palmer's legal team fired back with their own claims about substandard work and breach of contract. What started as an ambitious partnership devolved into a bitter international legal battle that played out in Chinese courts. The dream of a 2016 launch evaporated as the ship sat incomplete in the shipyard. Financial problems weren't limited to the shipyard dispute. Palmer's broader business empire faced challenges during this period, with some of his mining operations struggling amid falling commodity prices. Critics pointed to these issues as evidence that Palmer had overextended himself, taking on a vanity project while his core businesses required attention. The Titanic II project, which required hundreds of millions in funding, became increasingly difficult to justify. In 2016, Palmer announced an indefinite postponement of the project. He didn't cancel it outright. Palmer never does anything halfway, but acknowledged that construction couldn't proceed until the legal issues were resolved. The incomplete hull remained at the Chinese shipyard, a rusting monument to ambition outpacing execution. Media outlets that had eagerly covered the project's announcement now wrote obituaries for the dream of sailing on Titanic II. The delays tarnished Palmer's reputation as a visionary. Critics who'd called the project tasteless or impractical felt vindicated. Even supporters who defended the concept began questioning whether Palmer could actually deliver. The Titanic II project became shorthand for overpromised and underdelivered ambitions, joining the ranks of other billionaire passion projects that never materialized. For several years, it seemed the ship would never leave the shipyard, destined to be dismantled for scrap or left to decay. Yet Palmer never formally abandoned the project. In interviews during this quiet period, he'd occasionally mention Titanic II, insisting it remained viable and would eventually sail. Most observers dismiss these comments as face-saving gestures from a man unwilling to admit defeat. The project seemed dead in all but name, another cautionary tale about the gap between announcement and reality. The new announcement. Then something unexpected happened. In March 2022, Palmer announced that Titanic 2 was back on track, with construction set to resume and a new target launch date of 2026. The announcement caught many by surprise. Palmer claimed to have secured new funding and resolved the outstanding disputes that had stalled the project. Blue Star Line released updated renderings and promotional materials, signaling this wasn't just empty talk. The 2026 timeline represented a decade-long delay from the original target, but Palmer framed it as a realistic assessment given modern shipbuilding complexities. He pointed to the challenges other cruise lines had faced with new vessel construction, noting that even routine builds often experience delays. Titanic 2, being anything but routine, required patience and persistence. Palmer positioned himself as someone who'd learned from the previous setbacks and was now approaching the project with renewed focus. Media reaction was mixed. Some outlets covered the announcement enthusiastically, publishing fresh articles about the ship's features and Palmer's determination. Others took a more skeptical tone, reminding readers about the previous false starts and legal battles. Industry analysts questioned whether Palmer had actually secured sufficient funding or if this was another publicity stunt. The public seemed split between excitement and cynicism. Palmer addressed the skepticism head-on in interviews. He acknowledged the delays and disputes, but insisted they'd strengthened rather than weakened the project. According to Palmer, the extra time allowed for better planning and incorporation of newer technologies. He claimed to have lined up new manufacturing partners and secured commitments from suppliers for the specialized materials needed for historically accurate interiors. The announcement also included updated information about the planned route. Rather than the original Belfast to New York route taken by the RMS Titanic, Titanic 2 would sail from Dubai to Southampton for its maiden voyage. Palmer explained this choice as strategic, tapping into the wealthy Middle Eastern market and ending in England where the original ship's journey began. The route change raised eyebrows but seemed pragmatic from a business perspective. Social media exploded with reactions. Titanic enthusiasts shared the news eagerly, debating whether they'd actually purchase tickets if the ship launched. Memes proliferated with jokes about booking third-class tickets and avoiding ice. Some criticized Palmer for reviving what they considered a disrespectful project, while others defended it as a legitimate historical tribute. The announcement succeeded in generating buzz, even if not everyone was convinced it would lead anywhere. Blue Star Line's website was updated with new information, including an email sign-up for those interested in being notified when tickets became available. Thousands reportedly registered within days, suggesting genuine public interest despite the skepticism. Palmer touted these numbers as proof that demand existed for the unique experience Titanic 2 would offer. Whether this interest would translate into actual bookings remained to be seen, but the initial response provided some validation. Modern safety meets historic design. One of the biggest challenges in creating Titanic 2 involves reconciling historical authenticity with modern safety regulations. The original Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for 1,178 people despite carrying over 2,200 passengers and crew on its maiden voyage. This inadequate capacity directly contributed to the massive loss of life when the ship sank. No maritime authority would approve a modern vessel with such deficiencies. Titanic 2 must comply with SOLAS, the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, which mandates sufficient lifeboats for everyone aboard, plus additional capacity. This means Titanic 2 will carry lifeboats for at least 2,400 passengers and 900 crew, plus extra boats. The challenge is incorporating all these lifeboats without destroying the ship's historical appearance. Naval architects have worked on designs that hide modern lifeboats or make them blend with the ship's period aesthetic. The hull construction presents another major difference. The original Titanic used riveted steel plates, a standard technique in 1912. Unfortunately, those rivets proved to be a weak point. Many popped loose when the ship struck the iceberg, accelerating the flooding. Modern shipbuilding uses welded construction, creating stronger joints less prone to failure. Titanic 2 will feature welded steel despite the visual differences, prioritizing structural integrity over absolute authenticity. Navigation and communication technology represents perhaps the most dramatic upgrade. The original Titanic relied on basic radio equipment and visual spotting by lookouts in the crow's nest. Titanic 2 will have GPS navigation, radar, sonar, satellite communications, and advanced weather forecasting. The ship will be able to detect obstacles like ice fields from miles away, making a repeat of the 1912 disaster virtually impossible from a navigation standpoint. Modern maritime regulations also require extensive fire suppression systems, emergency power, watertight compartments that actually work, and evacuation procedures that account for all passengers. The original Titanic's watertight compartments weren't actually watertight. They didn't extend high enough to prevent water from spilling over into adjacent compartments as the ship tilted. Titanic 2's compartments will be truly sealed, capable of containing floods without compromising the entire vessel. The propulsion system presents an interesting compromise. The original Titanic burned coal in massive boilers to generate steam for its engines. Modern environmental regulations make coal burning impractical, not to mention the crew required to shovel coal would be enormous. Titanic 2 will use diesel engines for actual propulsion while maintaining cosmetic smokestacks that might emit steam for visual effect. Passengers seeking authenticity will need to accept this particular modernization. Stability is another crucial upgrade. Modern ships use stabilizer fins and advanced hull designs to reduce rolling and pitching in rough seas. While the original Titanic was considered stable for its era, it lacked the sophisticated systems that make contemporary cruise ships comfortable even in heavy weather. Titanic 2 will incorporate these technologies, making for a smoother ride that the original passengers could never have experienced. The tension between authenticity and safety runs throughout the entire design. How do you make passengers feel like they've traveled back to 1912 while surrounding them with modern safety features? The answer involves creative concealment and compromise. Modern sprinkler systems hide behind period-appropriate ceilings. Emergency exits are disguised as regular doorways. Public address systems are built into decor. The goal is making safety invisible without making it less effective. Current construction status. So where does construction actually stand as of late 2024? This is where things get murky. Blue Star Line hasn't released detailed progress reports or construction photos showing significant advancement. Unlike other major cruise ship builds where shipyards regularly publish updates and media gets access to document progress, the Titanic 2 project remains frustratingly opaque. Some maritime industry observers have attempted to verify construction status through contacts in China's shipbuilding industry. Reports vary wildly. Some claim that basic hull work has resumed at a Chinese shipyard, possibly not the original CSC Jinling facility. Others suggest that no meaningful construction has occurred since the 2022 announcement, with the project remaining in planning phases. Without official confirmation or photographic evidence, it's difficult to determine the truth. The lack of transparency has fueled skepticism. Major shipbuilding projects typically involve hundreds of workers, visible progress, and documentation. Modern cruise ships take 2 to 3 years to build once construction seriously begins, with clear milestones like keel laying, hull completion, and float-out ceremonies. None of these milestone announcements have emerged for Titanic 2. If the ship is genuinely on track for 2026, construction should be well underway with substantial progress visible. Palmer and Blue Star Line haven't addressed these concerns directly. Their public communications focus on the ship's eventual launch and the experience it will offer rather than current construction specifics. This approach could indicate that progress is slower than hoped, or it could simply reflect a decision to avoid making announcements until major milestones are achieved. Previous premature announcements led to embarrassment when timelines slipped, so caution might be warranted. The global shipbuilding industry faces its own challenges that could impact Titanic 2. Supply chain disruptions, skilled labor shortages, and material cost increases have affected projects worldwide. Even major cruise lines with established relationships and deep pockets have experienced delays with new vessels. A one-off project like Titanic 2, requiring specialized work and historical authenticity, faces additional complications that standard builds don't encounter. Manufacturing the interior components presents particular challenges. The ornate woodwork, custom furniture, and period-appropriate fixtures require specialized craftsmen and suppliers. These items can't be ordered from standard marine supply catalogs. Each piece needs custom design, approval, and fabrication. The timeline for completing interior work alone could stretch for years, even if the hull were finished tomorrow. This reality makes a 2026 launch seem increasingly optimistic. Another consideration involves sea trials and certification. Once built, Titanic 2 must undergo extensive testing to receive maritime certifications allowing passenger operations. These trials typically take months, involving multiple voyages to test systems under various conditions. Classification societies must inspect and approve every aspect of the vessel. This process can't be rushed, and any issues discovered during trials could delay launch significantly. The honest assessment: unless Blue Star Line has been conducting construction under extraordinary secrecy, the 2026 timeline appears unrealistic. A ship of Titanic 2's size and complexity requires visible, documented progress to meet that deadline. As 2025 approaches with no evidence of a nearly complete vessel, expectations should be adjusted accordingly. This doesn't mean the project is cancelled, but another delay seems likely. The route and experience. If Titanic 2 does eventually sail, what will the experience actually look like? Blue Star Line has painted an enticing picture of a journey that combines historical immersion with modern luxury. The planned maiden voyage from Dubai to Southampton spans roughly 4,000 nautical miles, taking approximately 2 weeks, depending on the route and weather conditions. This timing mirrors the length of transatlantic crossings in the early 20th century. Ticket pricing remains somewhat mysterious, though estimates suggest first-class suites could command $50,000 or more per person for the maiden voyage, with second and third class significantly less. These prices reflect both the unique nature of the journey and the exclusive experience promised to passengers. Future voyages after the maiden trip would likely be somewhat cheaper, but Titanic 2 would never compete with mass-market cruise pricing. The onboard experience emphasizes immersion in Edwardian luxury. First-class passengers would dress for dinner in period-appropriate formal wear. Think tuxedos and evening gowns reminiscent of 1912 fashion. The first-class dining saloon would serve multi-course meals prepared using historical recipes and presentations. Entertainment would include live orchestras playing music from the period, though probably without requiring passengers to go down with the ship like the original band did. Second-class accommodations on Titanic 2 aim to recreate what was actually quite comfortable middle-class travel for its era. The original Titanic's second class exceeded first class on many other ships of the time. Passengers in this category would have well-appointed cabins, their own dining saloon with quality food, and access to promenade decks and public spaces. The experience would be less opulent than first class, but still far from Spartan. Third class represents the most interesting challenge. The original third-class accommodations were basic, small cabins often shared with communal facilities and simple meals. Modern expectations and regulations make truly authentic third-class conditions impossible. Titanic 2's third-class cabins will be larger and better appointed than the originals, while still maintaining period aesthetic and the sense of class distinction that defined the era. Blue Star Line has suggested that passengers could move between classes during the voyage by purchasing upgrades or participating in special events. This flexibility addresses modern sensibilities while maintaining the tiered experience. Nobody wants to feel completely restricted to one area of the ship for 2 weeks, even if they bought the cheapest tickets. Finding the right balance between authenticity and customer satisfaction will be crucial. Entertainment beyond period-appropriate activities presents challenges. Modern passengers expect Wi-Fi, cell service, and digital entertainment. How do you provide these amenities while maintaining historical atmosphere? The solution likely involves discrete modernization, Wi-Fi networks with hidden access points, subtle charging stations, and common areas where modern technology is available but not visually intrusive. First-class suites might include modern amenities camouflaged behind period decor. The target demographic appears to be wealthy travelers, history enthusiasts, and Titanic obsessives willing to pay premium prices for a unique experience. Blue Star Line also hopes to attract the ultra-wealthy seeking exclusive adventures to add to their collection. Whether there's sufficient demand at the expected price points remains questionable. The cruise industry has shifted toward larger vessels carrying more passengers at moderate prices rather than small exclusive ships serving the wealthy few. Critics and skeptics. Not everyone is buying what Clive Palmer is selling. Maritime industry experts have consistently questioned the project's viability, and their skepticism has only grown with each delay. Naval architects point out that building a one-off replica costs substantially more than building a modern cruise ship using standardized designs and mass-produced components. The economics simply don't favor Titanic 2. Palmer's business track record provides additional reason for doubt. Beyond the Titanic 2 delays, he's announced other ambitious projects that never materialized or faced significant problems. A planned dinosaur theme park and resort in Australia generated headlines but delivered limited results. Various mining ventures have been mired in legal disputes. This pattern suggests someone better at launching ideas than executing them. Financial analysts question where Palmer is actually sourcing the hundreds of millions required to complete Titanic 2. His business empire, while substantial, isn't infinite. Cruise ship construction typically costs $500 million to over $1 billion, depending on size and features. Even with Chinese construction keeping costs lower than European yards, Titanic 2's specialized requirements likely push it toward the higher end of that range. Has Palmer really secured adequate financing? The ethical questions persist. Some critics argue that commercializing a tragedy that killed over 1,500 people remains inherently disrespectful, regardless of how tastefully done. Building a replica that deliberately evokes that disaster for profit strikes them as macabre. While Palmer frames the project as tribute and historical preservation, not everyone accepts that characterization. The debate over appropriate commemoration versus exploitation continues. Practical concerns also emerge. Even if built, would Titanic 2 be economically sustainable? Operating a ship requires continuous revenue to cover fuel, crew wages, maintenance, port fees, insurance, and other expenses. These costs run into tens of millions annually. With a limited passenger capacity and a niche market, could Titanic 2 generate sufficient bookings to remain profitable long-term? Many industry observers doubt it. Some historians and Titanic researchers appreciate the attention Palmer's project brings to the original ship's history, but question whether a replica serves educational purposes better than museums and documentaries. The Titanic Belfast Museum and permanent exhibitions elsewhere provide rich historical experiences without the ethical complications of commercial exploitation. Does the world actually need a sailing replica,